for the last 15 years and really ad tech and digital, we've gotten almost addicted to, if I saw someone do something, they saw an impression of an ad, they clicked on an email, I know that it must have had an impact. And so really what's happening, and with third-party cookies eventually going away, that observation of I know someone did something, therefore I can trust it is going to have to change.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
Pleased to be joined today by Chris Comstock, who's the Chief Product Officer at Claravine. So a lot of folks don't know what Claravine is or what Claravine does. So the first thing I want to do is give Chris the opportunity to let everyone know what the elevator pitch is for Claravine.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Happy to be here and kind of talk about something that I know we talk about a lot about at Claravine, but it's starting to surface more and more in the day-to-day of marketing, around marketing measurement. So, generally for Claravine, company's been around about 8 years, but we're really helping enterprise brands solve a marketing taxonomy and metadata management problem. And we're really doing it differently in a SaaS platform to help connect both technology, people, and data, but do it proactively. So once data flows into their different systems, whether that be through measurement or through creating customer experiences through content and, the campaigns that consumers see, all data, they can trust the data is showing up and, they're able to make fast, quick decisions. We don't get into the analytics specifically, but really helping create alignment across those teams through taxonomy and metadata.
Cool. Well, that's super valuable. I've noticed across all sorts of clients, enterprise all the way down to mid-sized businesses. Obviously, small-sized businesses often don't have much data at all, other than what they get out of a simple analytics package. But as they start to grow, you end up with data sitting a lot in silos. So how do you guys get all the data into one place and then actually provide actionable insights out of the data?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time on the data management problem, both at Adobe and Oracle on the DMP side, and kind of one of the beauties where we really sit is we don't bring in all the data, all the customer level data. We're really just helping make all the systems and technology talk to each other. And so when you think about it from that metadata taxonomy perspective, we're helping make sure everything's set up properly so data flows across the ecosystem. From an enterprise brand, that's from the creative assets to the websites and the landing pages and the emails that are getting built by different teams, and then ultimately into, whether it be advertising, social posts, really customer experiences that consumers act with, and then all the way down into the analytics system. So we're helping make sure that data all connects in together. So the kind of the volume of data isn't as, cumbersome or, as big as we're dealing with. We're really just helping bring people and technology together to make sure that they're setting everything up properly to make things flow nicely and make the customer experience data work.
So would another way of thinking about it as sort of the data gets pre-aggregated and filtered on the, from the other platform, and then you guys pull over the aggregated filtered data, not the raw data. Is that one way to think about it?
That's one. Yeah, that's exactly it. And I mean, you'd be surprised that, again, we're helping solve a problem that many people don't want to talk about, but exists everywhere. And there's still so many people operating, copying and pasting from one system to another, working in spreadsheets, emailing spreadsheets back and forth. We're helping kind of remove some of those bottlenecks. So everything from how you name a campaign to how things are set up, making sure they're set up with brand safety in mind, making sure the right creative message is being put in front of the right consumer for the right audience. And then making sure that all the tracking is set up. So, take a simple email campaign. There's, multiple links in that email, making sure they're all structured properly. So when the consumer clicks on that link, the email marketer's not wondering, did I set everything up right? Is the data going to be collected? They know that it's going to work when they hit go. Which, even in a simple email campaign, there's often 3 or 4 different teams that go into building that email, go into the, who's going to see it, the brand message, the creative. It can take sometimes weeks to even create simple email campaigns. We're trying to help accelerate that time to insights, if you will, by making sure everything's set up properly.
So there are probably some really clean data sources and some pretty messy ones. So which ones tend to be pretty messy?
Everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, there's teams have been trying to solve this problem. They've just really been solving them in silos or pockets. And so I mentioned those spreadsheets, or, you've got your CMS and someone's built, business logic and rules to make the CMS work and have rules around the data. The problem is when data starts to flow from one system to another. It's kind of like the game of telephone back from school. Like by the time it gets to the fourth or fifth person, something typically has gone wrong. And so, it's, over time, I'd say the data sources often without rules in place or a system like Claravine in place can get worse over time. So you think of your creative dam, you've got hundreds of thousands of digital assets, could start clean, right? Because there's a desire to keep it clean. But as more people create more assets and people come and go in the organization, that kind of what we talk about, the standards around that intellectual property goes out the door. And so it just gets messier and messier over time because there's nothing to keep it, to really govern the standards, if you will. CRM, there's been a big focus on cleaning data and keeping it clean because it is your customer record. But there's in some cases teams spending countless hours and energy into cleaning that data, both proactively once they get it and even trying to, clean it before it comes up in place. And so I wouldn't say there's any one more that's messy. They're usually just, they're structured different ways. What is changing, is a little bit is that aggregate data is making it harder to clean data after the fact, which we think is a huge opportunity for us as a company that the market is pushing for this change more than it ever has.
Interesting. I know there's lots of changes obviously going on within analytics, and it just occurred to me that one of the areas of compliance that I see a lot when my agency is pitching a client or taking over a client from in-house team or another agency is sort of lack of consistency just with regards to, for example, tagging of UTMs on things, right? So they remember to do it within paid media, but then they forget to do it in email, or they do it in email, then they forget to do it in social, but they do it in paid media, or one campaign is missing it. And then, so you don't realize how well something did because it wasn't properly tagged. Does Claravine help with that compliance as well?
Exactly. So you can think about it really takes away that kind of abstracts the technical complexity of what needs to be on the link. We become the source of truth for building those links, ensuring that they're set up and ensuring there's consistency. And in most cases, those UTM parameters and the values that show up are really all of the data that's available to the analytics team. So what we help is create more dimensionality around that data. So more dimensions rather than just what's on the link. It can be an ID. That ID can then map to 7, 8, 20, however many dimensions that allow richer analytics. And again, for the analytics teams, now they trust that the data, because they have a single place to get that data. They don't have to wonder around the problem that you just mentioned. Did this agency put links on the email, on the paid media campaigns? Did someone put on the email campaigns? And you don't know what you don't know.
Right. Yeah. Well, certainly, within the ecosystem at large, we've seen, third-party cookie erosion continue. It's been missing from Safari for ages, and so to some extent, we're getting a little bit of a loss of fidelity in tracking. So, how should marketers who rely on data for decisions deal with the increasing ambiguity within some of the data sets?
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about this, and I've just been I've had a couple city tours on talking about data clean rooms, and obviously we're not a clean room, but the world is moving towards more privacy-centric marketing. I think Apple has brilliantly taken a marketing tactic around removing identifiers, removing consumer information, and so it's creating more and more blind spots for marketers. So we talk about kind of the difference between observation and experimentation. And so for the last 15 years, and really ad tech and digital, we've gotten almost addicted to, if I saw someone do something, they saw an impression of an ad, they clicked on an email, I know that it must have had an impact. And so really what's happening, and with third-party cookies eventually going away, that observation of I know someone did something, therefore I can trust it, is going to have to change. And what that change means is that you start to have to trust those aggregate metrics, right? Everyone's becoming a walled garden, whether that be Facebook, Google's already there with some of their ads data hub, performance data that they'll give you inside of the Google ecosystem. And so what we're starting to see, and I think this is where that market pull is happening, is you've got to be proactive to understand your inputs in order to trust those outputs. So we talk a lot about the inputs and outputs of marketing, because once data has been aggregated and customer identification's been removed, you have to know what went into that aggregation to be able to make sense of it, specifically across, what went from kind of three walled gardens of, kind of Facebook, Google, and Amazon, to now you've got, Walmart's a media network and Target's a media network. And the retail media networks now I just saw are reducing paid search spend. And so it's starting to shift the landscape that you now have data going in many different places, and you've got to understand across those different places what's working and what's not working, which is a big cultural shift, getting away from the audience-based retargeting.
Yeah, it's interesting that once you do that and you no longer necessarily have access to the segments as previously defined as a marketer or as an agency, it may have ramifications on creative as well, because sometimes you want to create a different type of creative for a different segment, but if you don't have access to the segment, you have to figure out how to change your creative strategy. Yep. Is there any best practices around that?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting a lot of our customers that are starting to kind of lean into how do we take creative metadata, the creative message, and can be able to connect it into paid media. So you've got teams, and this is where we talk about those silos and connecting, people and data more. Mm-hmm. Some of our customers have hundreds of people that are tagging creative assets, right? All of that information lives maybe in a DAM or in a spreadsheet. How do we make that accessible to the media teams to say, this is the creative asset that's got this message and these attributes? Then it gets uploaded into your ad server and it becomes a creative ID, right? And you lose all that information. So we help make sure that connectivity exists throughout the full life cycle of kind of that customer experience, by in turn then making it available to the measurement teams. And so there's a renewed interest around, and some of it related to contextual targeting, right? Which, how do you take creative and understand what's working and what's not working, and understand the true impact of that to know what to produce more of? And so we're starting to see that kind of cycle and reducing that time to insights come up more and more as it relates to creative, which is exciting.
So for folks who are just, onboarding either your platform or a platform like yours, what changes do they need to make operationally to sort of embrace this sort of data-rich environment where now they're really gluing all the different data together?
Yeah, I mean, I always say it's going to take 10 times longer than you expect, right? Change is hard. So start yesterday or start today. We see two different approaches. There's folks that have hired into this role. So we've seen some, VPs of measurement effectiveness who have really embraced the kind of change and have it go outward. We see other situations where, one or two teams or one market will kind of pilot and test the change kind of end to end, and then take those learnings and take it to the, other teams, other agencies. So it can kind of go many different ways. But I think generally where we've seen success is it's a company initiative, right? There's a decision, and it's a multi-year process to really rethink your measurement strategy. I think I just saw the Airbnb kind of reference. It took, I think, 3 years from their shift to be, to go back to brand, rethink their brand strategy as a marketing tactic and kind of be less reliant on paid search. It's 3-4 years now in the making. So it's, it's a big kind of undertaking to get everyone on board. And obviously I'm somewhat biased with our software. It helps when you have a piece of software to manage that change, which is one of the big value drivers that we talk about, is even if you agree on it and set it once, it's going to change tomorrow and it's going to change the day after that.
Yeah, that's good advice to just get started.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I've noticed over the years with clients and with prospects that the marketers who have the best handle on LTV and can actually take that LTV data and, understand it all the way out to the early touch points can allocate media and marketing more effectively. So how does your platform, empower marketers to use the LTV data and sort of know, essentially predictively, like this is probably going to be a really great click or impression or customer as early as possible in that touch point of the marketing cycle?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting that I feel like what's the saying? What's old is new again. And so like you're starting to see some of the mixed media modeling come back in, and just general. We talk about that experimentation, and so it's having kind of that common language of understanding your first party data, because that's still obviously key, to know what your value is. But then have alignment of test Amazon. How does Amazon media compare to Facebook, and how does Facebook compare to email, and being able to have the process in place and the team internally to look at that data and to trust that you're not going to have every answer anymore. You can't see every click, you can't see every impression, but if directionally, because you've isolated a certain market, a specific creative message, if you can see that and see how that target segment, even if it's using data that exists within Amazon or targeting criteria that a specific platform has, that was isolated and you can see a direct impact on your business, then you probably want to spend more. And there is a little bit of an uncomfort as that aggregate data and that concept of like, well, I don't know exactly, but I see it having a massive impact on revenue. Then you probably, kind of keep iterating, be agile, but, really it comes back to how is it ultimately having an impact on really business outcomes or revenue at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned how media mix modeling is sort of coming back into vogue because, back in the days of broadcast TV and radio and print advertising, right? You didn't have the ability to have cookies tracking people individually either, right? And you had to answer some of those same questions about media waste or marketing spend waste. I'm a huge fan now for marketers who are big enough to, do combinations of sort of longitudinal tests over time, but also geographic split tests are huge, right? Because then you can understand interaction effects between media, right? And we see time and time again that certain upper funnel spend results in organic search behavior. Similarly, a highly engaged influencer campaign will also result in surges in search behavior. So the search is as much a metric of success as it is a media type, right? So it sounds like you guys really empower those kinds of big picture decision-making frameworks as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's really about creating alignment. I say we solve more of a data and people problem of, it's still shocking to me how often, Excel spreadsheets are being emailed around and how long it takes the back and forth. And hey, I don't have this version of the spreadsheet and this has got the taxonomy in it, or I don't know how to name things. And then the analytics team doesn't get that information. And so, I think generally it's really just shifting that mindset to, what you mentioned, instead of trying to, aggregate data and clean up, I feel like log files and all this user level data to trust it to make sense. It's shifting to that experimentation mindset, which means you got to have better coordination and collaboration across all of your teams, the objectives, what are you trying to accomplish? And then take that hypothesis and, okay, did our hypothesis work? Right. And, I always think it's fascinating that A/B testing on landing pages was, took off, but that same kind of testing mindset's been challenging to gain adoption in a non-controlled environment. And so that ambiguity can be tough when there's money involved, and money being thousands of dollars in media. So
absolutely. Final questions really about like 2023. Nobody knows if it's going to be a recessionary environment at a macro level or not. But I think data is going to be critically important one way or the other, because nobody wants to have wasted media spend or marketing spend. So what has you excited about 2023?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I know, if you asked me 2 months ago, the end of the cookies and Google Analytics changing and kind of it was forcing a change. I think that's still going to happen because I think people are rethinking that. I think the privacy-centric marketing, again, I mentioned one of the panels recently I was on, it's like, I think it's finally coming to the point where privacy-centric marketing is finally going to kind of tip over and be more the norm, especially here in North America. But I think at some point we'll look back and be amazed by the things we did with third-party data, third-party cookies. I think this might be the year that finally starts to trend the other direction than people to keep operating the way they have for the last 10 years. So.
Great. Well, I look forward to watching you guys continue to layer on new features and functionality and grow the platform. Thanks so much for joining me, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.